She believes in being unapologetic about pursuing what sets your heart on fire and being intentional about building wealth. This week, we speak to the CEO of Jubilee Health Insurance, Njeri Jomo. This is She Means Business. I am your host, Claire Munde. Njeri, you have over 2 decades of experience in the financial services sector, and you've been named CEO of the Year among other accolades. And when I looked at your LinkedIn profile, you describe yourself as a transformational leader. Tell us some of the pivotal points in your career that have led you to where you are today.
Thank you, Claire. It's definitely good to be here. And indeed, an accolade is just that. I think at times it can sort of be the place where we are caught up, but it takes a lot to get to that point where you have recognition or otherwise, and that really shouldn't be where the message is lost. But there's a lot of work, I think, that is often not seen that goes behind the scenes. I have been, yes, in insurance for about 20 years, and it's both insurance and investments. I have been on both ends, both on the sales end, the person who sells you insurance policy, to being in the boardroom, to being the underwriter and doing claims. And all of these different aspects give me such a unique perspective to how business is done and enables me to do well today. So I think all of these aspects do have a contribution. I've spoken to the fact that I have been on the shop floor. One of the most pivotal moments in my career was when I came from underwriting and claims to go into sales. And you know, your typical underwriter is seated in the office, they have all the papers, they have studied, and they know their stuff, right? And now you have to go and convince Claire to buy an insurance policy. And it really did require a lot of review on how I perceived myself, because it felt that like it's hawking. And sort of going back and saying, okay, why am I struggling with this? Why is it so hard to go up to someone if I believe in the product and so on? And caused me to do a lot of self-work in terms of understanding who I am and why I do what I do. So that was absolutely pivotal for me. 2, it also gave me a unique perspective about what customers actually need, because I was speaking to them directly and I was engaging them and finding out what is it about this product they like and so on. And today, this experience is very useful for me because I have an understanding of what it feels like to be on the shop floor. And we get caught up as executives in designing boardroom products, right? We don't go back and ask the customer, how do you like this? How does this fit? And that experience really did give me an opportunity to understand what customers would need and are looking for. The third thing is, of course, any good product, it doesn't matter how good it is, it can fail on distribution. You need to be able to find the best way to get it in front of the customer in the way it best suits them. Is it that insurance agent? Is it digital? Is it through their bank and so on? So having been a salesperson was very important for me in the regard that I got to understand what our agents go through, what are their challenges, how can we make it easier for them, and how, even while I'm CEO today, I'm able to relate and understand to their challenges and be able to make sure that our decisions are relevant to supporting that distribution environment. So the sales move was quite pivotal for me. The other one was moving from insurance into investments or asset management. Now, I will admit, Claire, I had never gotten to, I knew about money markets from a far distance. We all talk about equities, but it really gave me an opportunity to understand the stock market, equities, bonds, perhaps even offshore markets a lot more. And incidentally, this had two ends for me. It was one, the deeper appreciation of how because insurance is protection, it's risk management. What are we managing risk for? And therefore, how does this fit into wealth creation? So that was really useful for me. I got a great opportunity to advise a lot of clients on their wealth creation journey. It's great when a client can call you and tell you, I have 2 houses, or I have 3-4 pieces of land, what should I do? And you have to realize that that's a responsibility and go back and do your research so that then you can be able to advise them in a way that continues to support them. But on the second reason as to why that particular experience was unique for me is because it's really helped me in how I relate with my money and how I understand money. Because the thing is, often these things are not taught in school, whether it's budgeting, should I be in equities, understanding the relationship between risk and return, right? And being able to understand if you're investing in gold, What does that look like? And back then, we will talk about the markets that were operating 24 hours, which were the BRIC markets. And Brazil, Russia, India, China became our big conversation. So it also was pivotal for me because it helped me really understand how the investment markets work. I know that just because you hear there's an IPO, you won't double your money, like some Kenyans would assume. I understand why 10% return is a really, really good return, especially for a bond or a money market fund and so on. So these two were two particularly pivotal moments for me.
Wow, I think those are very powerful points you've put there. But I'd like us to go back a little bit to, you started by saying an accolade is just that. And the way people can be, executives can just get caught up in their offices, they don't know what's on the ground. Tell us, what's your leadership style and what is leadership to you? Because sometimes executives just get caught up like, I lead a team, are you really in touch with your team?
So leadership, as you've said, is you get appointed. And I think on day one, you'll get appointed. Claire is XYZ and Jerry is now the CEO and so on. But there's a couple of levels, I believe, as a leader, you must be conscious of for your leadership to truly have impact. When you get appointed, what you have is position. That is all you have. And that title, a lot, on its own, will not enable you to have the right impact. You have to go a step further, and this next level is around relationships. And you have to be able to learn how to appeal to people to get things done, not just relying on your title. And I think a lot of us stay a little too long at that level where we want to remind someone, I am this, I am the manager for this and that. If you need to repeat it, I think there's already feedback, right? So you need to be able to build relationships. So people do it, not because it's your title, but because you relate to them as a human being. The next one is around results. The fact that these people have seen you deliver and be able to rely on you as a performer, and therefore then that gives you a next level, unlocks a next level of engagement for you. The next level, ideally, is being able to reproduce leaders like yourself, and I think that's absolutely critical. So there's a couple of levels you have to go through as a leader. If you stay at the position level for too long, you're bound to lose it. You have leadership, I keep saying, is among the hardest things. You're relying on other people to deliver what you have committed. So you're going to need to know how to understand the individuals, understand how to generate support for them to enable you to do what you're doing. And I have learned this from leaders over time who I have worked with and worked for, who I got to see different leadership styles and was able to say, I wanted to be more the kind of leader who was able to engage my team, be able to understand them, because people are such a beautiful force in terms of you being able to leverage on the different mindsets, the different intellectual abilities, and putting all of this together to deliver results. So I think as a leader, for you to do well, to excel in leadership, you have to be able to understand how to harness the people resource that you have in terms of the different strengths within the team to be able to achieve results. Now back to the issue of recognitions and accolades. I've been privileged to receive quite a number. And from the very first one, I think I took a moment to try and understand, what does this mean? Is it me? But the first thing that resonated with me was how much it felt like a responsibility to live up to it. And I think I would not want to lose that, because the minute you don't have the conscience to appreciate that this recognition is one thing, but it then means that I have to be able to hold space for others. That, look, I am now in a space where I can use my voice. What am I going to use my voice to do? I'm now in a space where in certain rooms there's a certain recognition. What am I going to use that for? And be very deliberate to use our voice and our presence for the right things. So I think this accolades, this recognitions, these titles get us in rooms. What do we use that opportunity for? And I think we remain cognizant of, if we remain cognizant of that, then we'll have the right impact. And as you said, I'm very big on transformation, and I'm very big on impact as well. I have to be clear on, so when I do this, what happens? Because I want to have the right impact, right? It's not that I'm here, so what? What impacts did it have? Did I use my advocacy right? Did I speak up when I needed to speak up? Did I drive initiatives that drove the outcomes that I intended for it to have? Not just getting caught up in the business. Does it have the right impacts? But also in transformation, what does it truly do? Right? What does it really move? I think that is why we occupy the offices that we hold. If you think about it, Claire, and I've said this many times, we're not any smarter than other people to be in the offices that we hold. And it's very easy for us to think we are. But for us to remain grounded, we have to realize that there's a lot of brilliant people around us. I'm a big believer in assignments. So for the time I am here, what am I here to do? Right? because this is this season, what will be the next season? So can I finish my assignment in this season? And then so when I move into the next one, this one is done and I've achieved the right impact for this season. And that's what, for me, I think as leaders, we must be very conscious of. It's not a right. We don't just sit here. We don't use it to lord over people, and it doesn't make us superhuman, because also that has a very difficult implication on how we also judge ourselves. But when we recognize we are human, we're going to put in our best effort. Yes, we are carrying responsibility, and we carry it responsibly. And as I've said, use our voices responsibly, use our presence in certain rooms to drive the right impact. I think that helps us. So that when we move and transition from one office or one role or one accolade or the next, we remain grounded to realize that first and foremost we are human beings.
Wow, I think that's quite powerful.
Yes.
And you've talked a little bit about when you first got your first accolades and you're wondering, oh, is this me? And it comes with a lot of responsibility. Still going back to LinkedIn, I saw there was a post you had written about this imposter syndrome. Have you experienced it, and how did you go about it?
I think imposter syndrome is I keep saying I have experienced it so many times. It's hard to sort of define it as something that ends or otherwise. And I've said, let's start with that. When you think you are supernatural and you put yourself to impossible standards, yes, you're going to feel like an imposter. You're going to be in rooms and start wondering, they're going to realize I'm a fraud. But I think you have to go back to being very honest about, why am I in this room? Why am I having this conversation? Do the work, prepare. But I think one of the things is you're supposed to face your biggest fear. I think we used to be told that often. At times the biggest fear is yourself. You sort of are already judging yourself so hard, setting expectations, at times also living in your head. Half the time you think the other person is looking at you and think, why is she saying that? Maybe it's just you doing that to yourself, right? So I think being very honest about, look, I'm human, I am here, these are my capabilities, this is what I can do, but also extending a little grace to yourself and when things do drop, and they will. Oh, and they will, right?
Yeah.
That recognizing that, look, yes, this will happen, but it's my ability to recover from these issues and be able to move on. So I think imposter syndrome will show up. Does it ever stop? I have lived for a couple of years and I'm convinced it really doesn't stop. It shows up in one form or the other, but you have to continue retaining your truths on who am I, right? What am I trying to do? What is my motivation for doing this? And assessing that really well, and making sure that you also extend a little grace in case it goes wrong. Well, it went wrong.
Yeah.
It's not that you're a failure. It's not that you don't normally put in your best effort. You do. But some things will go wrong. And I like to use a tool which is, I think you've heard a lot about it, about circle of concern, circle of influence, and circle of control. That most of the time there's a lot of things that will concern us. But inside that circle, there are things that we can influence. And there's a smaller circle of things that we have control over. Every time I want to have, my mind is traveling in a million ways of possibly things that have gone wrong or could go wrong, I like to go back and say, okay, I'm worried about our universe of problems. What do I have control of? And begin to take care of that. If I can take care of that, there's a sense of a bit better control around your circumstances, around your environment, and you feel a bit more in charge of what's going on around you. So I think it's useful to be able to be realistic, and I've said it goes back to, I'm human. Some things will go wrong, and they may be out of your control. But what can you do something about, and focus on those items and be able to do something about it.
Wow, that's powerful. Now I want us to go back a little bit to, you were talking about investments and insurance and all that. In Kenya, the penetration rate for insurance is very low, it's 3%. Tell us, why do you think that is the case? And when it comes to investments, why do you feel like there's need for more financial literacy? Not everybody understands tools. You hear like words thrown here and there, but people don't really deeply understand some of these tools and how to use them.
You've spoken to it. It's around the issue of financial literacy and being able to understand how all of these items within your investment toolkit then enable you to create wealth and continue to sustain it. When we go back, and this was something I learned, as I said, many, many years back, that you needed to start with knowing where your money was going. And often this would start at budgeting, because we said there's a budget, there's how you think, where you think your money is going, and there's where it's actually going. For example, if you tip the guy who was next to you in the parking, I'm sure it wasn't in your budget. So there's where your money is going that you don't think it is going. If someone called you and said, hey, can you send me 2,000 and doesn't send it back, I'm not sure I saw it in your budget where it says lend so-and-so some amount of money. So it often started at the foundation of budgeting and really knowing where my money is going. And then being able to say, okay, Do I like where it's going? What in this budget is items that are non-negotiable and I must spend on? What is adjustable in terms of I can adjust the amount that's going there? And how much can I do away with, which is called expendables, the items that you can do away with completely. Now, often this is that we have an interesting relationship with money because you want to do with it whatever you want, right? So you don't want to have the conversation of where is my money really going. The challenge is it doesn't matter how much money you make. If you don't fix the basics, no money will fix where you are. You're always going to be in a rat race where you're not making enough. And I used to tell people, and I like to tell these people this very often, as far as wealth creation is concerned, you don't want to be the person where when it's end month, you're receiving a certain amount of money and you're holding a pipe. And when you ask, I mean, money is going to everybody else and it leaves no impact on you. And there's this common joke we used to say when we were younger. You said, I was in town, I had 10,000, I don't know where my money went, right? It sort of is some feedback to you that maybe you do really need to record where your money is going so that you have a real assessment of where your money is going. So I think as Kenyans, financial literacy is not something we grew up with. And as I mentioned, when we had the Kenyan IPO, all of a sudden people began to assume that IPO is a way you double your money. We saw it a lot when we had the pyramid schemes and the Ponzi schemes. I think when you tell someone this will make you 7%, they ask you per annum. That's very little money. And often my question is in comparison to what? Yeah. And then there's often this conversation say, but I'd rather buy land. And most of the time, if you dig a little deeper, Claire, and ask this person, do you have the land? They don't, right? So yeah. I think financial literacy is a foundational concept for anyone. I think we really should teach it in terms of that and really assess our relationship with money. Now, as long as your financial literacy is not in check, I can assure you we cannot discuss insurance, because what insurance does, it protects your wealth. So how are you protecting what you don't even know, right? And the funny thing is, all these organizations we admire so much have such strong financial discipline. We look at our money every end of the year. We go into strategy. What's our plan for next year? We do budgets. We identify what money we will put in short term, long term, and so on. We identify instruments where we'll put in money for short periods. We identify instruments we'll put in for money for much longer, because we're trying to maximize investment income. We do that. Why would we be able to do it as individuals? And then half the time we're wondering why we are always in this trap. Maybe one of the things I'd like to challenge our viewers to do is take how much you earn, divide it by 365 days, and really begin to understand how much you earn per day. When you do, that 20 shillings begins to make sense. And that is why we call people who are wealthy mean. Yes? Yeah. Because when you go to a wealthy person and say, hi, can I have 5,000? Does it just come out? No. No, why? It's not because they're mean. It is because their funds are already invested. They don't have money sitting around waiting. But for us who don't have much, I mean, if you come and ask me, give me 1,000, it's here. Because I haven't understood that this 1,000 has potential to make me 10 shillings, 30 shillings, 100 shillings, and sooner or later, as I take advantage of compound interest, it makes me real money. Once I can take care of my financial literacy and my understanding of money and my relationship with money, we will not have a struggle with discussing insurance. Because insurance, as I've said, is really just protection. You buy a bigger TV, you buy a bigger padlock, right? Yeah. If you really value you, then ideally, as you're buying your car insurance, the first insurance you should have is on yourself. If you know you're going to be unwell, as opposed to going over the counter and saying, can I have painkillers? How about you actually have a proper health insurance that takes care of those things that help you stay well? But as long as we have a poor relationship with money, half the time I'm convinced then we have a poor relationship with ourselves. Then it's very hard to discuss all the other aspects that build on from there.
Well, I think that's very powerful. I think that thing of like when you ask a wealthy person for money, they've already planned their money. So it's not just sitting there. So I think that's food for thought for people to think about. But I'd like to know, what has been your biggest or best money decision so far?
My best money decision is I invest every month. And actually it's the first thing I do before I spend anything. Again, I learned it a while back. And it's the thing is, it doesn't even matter how much you do, but saving is actually a habit you teach yourself. It's a habit just like you teach yourself to, what are the smallest things? It's about whether you decide I'm going to take a 2-liter soda and down it, or I mean, all the exigencies that typically exist. But the minute you receive your money, if you make up your mind that I'm going to put away 1,000 shillings every month, I think as you do that, regardless of how much you earn, it can then be 10,000, it It can then be 20,000. But you will not start saving the day you earn $1 million. It's not going to happen. It's not a habit you have. And it goes back to how we operate as human beings. It's often said that thoughts become words, words become habits, isn't it? Yes. Habits become our character, then our character becomes our destiny, right? So it begins with our thoughts. What do you think about money? Again, my relationship with money and just how I think about opportunity. Do I think that when things are wrong, it's other people's business to take care of me? Right? So how I do that then helps me. Or do I think I have enough or don't have enough or it's too little, right? But when you are very clear that this is important to me because you can't keep having emergencies all the time, I think it's a very hard way to live. Life already has a lot of challenges. You really can't be on the edge of your seat every other time because money is it's currency. It moves and you know what it's like to have zero. So I learned how to put aside something every month. I do it religiously, have done it for as long as I've known how to do that. And I learned that the minute it leaves, I don't even touch it. It doesn't matter what fire is burning, I will not touch it. And over time, it's helped because it's moved from 1,000, it moved to more, and it became a discipline. 2, every time I have needed to change roles or I had an increment, I'd try not to fit into the extra. Please note the keyword here is try. But I try to make sure that whatever is over and above then also goes into saving. And it's because I'm very clear, just like an organization, you have a 5-year plan as an individual. And we should have 5-year strategic plans, right? We can tweak them a bit. But where are you going to be? And recently I was having a conversation with my coach and she asked me, 10 years from now, Jerry, what is that going to look like? If we understand that, then we're able to map all the things that we want to do, but you're also able to map the income requirements or financial outflow requirements. When you realize how much it's going to cost you, I can assure you, you're better off putting that money away right now. And when we discuss investments, usually an individual investor has a life cycle. You begin off as what we call the accumulation phase. When you're younger, you don't have a lot of bills, isn't it? It's when we are saying YOLO a lot, and life is light because it's just you. But that time, you sort of, whatever little you're making, you find that it's actually going to be very foundational to you over time. As you go into your 30s, 40s, 50s, you go into what we call the consolidation phase. Because by then you are beginning to have family, children are going to school. And it's interesting, I don't know whether you've thought about it, Claire, from when your baby starts going to school, how long will they be in school?
A long time.
Minimum 17 years is how long you will be paying for school fees, right? So once you realize that you don't have it in the accumulation phase, you're still happy-go-lucky and having fun. But by then, if you build in the discipline to put in something away, you begin to create a pool. And then as you go into your consolidation phase, you are able to, you're spending, of course, there's money going out every other month, every other 3 months, but you still have some headroom, if you think about it, to put away something because there's another phase that's coming. And this is not taught very much to Africans, that our children won't take care of us. It's called black tax. So because they won't take care of us, we need to think about after they've schooled, after they've lived through this, then what? Because we're not going to go and keep telling them, hey, can I have some money? So you also need to be making sure that as you go towards what we call the deaccumulation phase, usually you start to find that for most of us who are employed, you're getting to retirement. What you have is your pension. It's a fixed amount. It's probably going to be the longest holiday of your life without an income. So you then need to think about how you have enough assets. Probably pack them in low-risk assets by then. When you're younger, you can afford to invest in high-risk investments because you have time. Right? And you can weather the fluctuations. But as you grow older, you sort of want to move your money to low-risk assets like money market funds and bond funds and so on. So then what you're drawing out is an income. And all of this, I think, are very useful for us to understand because as we go through life, as we go through our careers, when you're younger, you could be a bit more diligent because the point that is coming where you'll need that money. You really don't want to go on the longest holiday of your life without money. And I like to tell young people, it's not the fun that ends. Trust me, the fun does not end. It's even there for me at this age, and I'm sure in another 20 years, life will still be fun. It's the money. Once the money ends, for some reason, the music stops. So please take care of that your financial wellness, so that at least you create a buffer. You do not want to be struggling when you're feeling unwell and you can't even get checked. You really want to go and tell them, run some tests. I want to know how I'm doing. You want to know when you have that headache, can they do a scan and just check whether everything is okay? Because those things, not taken care of earlier, the downstream effect is ridiculous. So again, I talk back to, if you do value you, there's certain things that when it comes to wealth creation, you will take care of, and more so for us as leaders, because we tend to forget ourselves over time. We're taking care of everybody else. We go back to the basics and think about, who am I in all of this? Because after this, we won't have the titles. We want to be able to say, I had a good life.
Yeah, yeah. Now, we'll go to a little bit on work-life balance, because we've talked about the different phases and our kids won't take care of us and whatnot. But on that issue of, it's not about the amount you put aside, it's about putting an amount aside. You know, there are people who argue that, really, if you're putting 500 bob, you'll never get wealthy. So what do you say to those people? Because there are people who are like, really, 500, you won't get wealthy. Let's be honest. Yes. So talk to that person who feels like, yes, I believe in this saving, I want to build wealth, but really where I'm at right now, I may not be able to put out, you know, hundreds of thousands aside every month or whatever. And that 500, will it make sense? And you know those people who say, if it can't solve my problems, then let's just eat it.
Spot on. But a lot of the people who are wealthy also have had to get there through very deliberate discipline. I'm not going to speak about entrepreneurs. I'm speaking about people who have accumulated wealth over time. Yeah. It takes time, but it also requires a lot of discipline. And that's why I've said, if you take 10,000 shillings, what is 10% of 10,000 shillings? You look at that, it's what, how much is that? 1,000 shillings, yeah. That's what you're going to earn in a year. Yeah. It's very easy for you to say, what is 1,000 shillings? But put it this way, you didn't have 1,000. So if you put away 500 shillings, in 10 months, you now have 5,000 shillings. Yeah. If you didn't, then in 10 months, you have 500 shillings. I think that's
perspective.
That perspective. And again, I've said, it's not even about the money. It's about a habit. If you don't create the habit, the savings habit, then investments is something we can't even go into discussing. You have to build the ability to put away the little. And we try to teach it even with young children, where you try to teach them, if I'm holding 500 shillings now, do I go and buy fries and what? Or do I decide, okay, fine, I'll buy fries for 250 and put away the 250. Again, the value of little money, that I get to value the little currency. The way I take care of my money when it's little, trust me, same steward when the money is a lot. You don't suddenly develop the discipline at 1 million. In fact, it's worse. When it's a million, now you're saying, I have it, so I already have it, so you're unlikely to develop it at that time. So if you can start with 500 shillings, please start. It's going to make all the difference. Because if we start now, by December, you will be holding 5,000 shillings. By the end of next year, without any interest, forget even discussing interest, you'll be holding possibly 6,000, 11,000 actually, without any interest. And it's still your 500 shillings doing the work. And that is how it works. Now, when you come to compounding interest, compound interest, it means that your interest makes you interest. And when you're younger, there's nothing as beautiful as the magic of compound interest, because you have time, right? And I've said, you're probably in the accumulation phase. You need to start doing something. If you're in the consolidation phase, fine, the children are already here, you're already paying rent or a mortgage, fine. But start small, start where you are. Once you build in the habit, it's a lot easier to increase the amount when it's already a way of doing things. I mean, you could already build a canvas, you're going to borrow at every opportunity, and that's fine. But you also get to realize that that's not sustainable. And you can borrow your future already. And we see this a lot, where people go into loans, that by the time you're retiring, your payout goes to settle the loan. So you're already eating tomorrow even before you get there. If there's anything that doesn't scare you enough, maybe I could tell you one more. All those great friends you have, trust me, the money goes,
they're gone.
They will be gone. So it does help that you do, take care of yourself a little. Just put away that 500 shillings. Today there are beautiful instruments like the money market fund, and you can be able to do this and save quite deliberately, very frequently. Save, even if it's 10 shillings, it will make all the difference.
So if you're faithful with the little, then even the big.
It's actually biblical. So yes, if whoever has more, will get more. Whoever has little,
even that
the little
will be
taken away. So I think knowing that, I'd rather not want to be on the little side.
On the other side, yes. So let's talk about work-life integration, work-life balance. In your role, there are a lot of demands. You're managing teams, you're trying to get impact and all these things. How do you manage your professional life as well as your personal life to ensure that none of them is suffering?
I think that's an interesting one, as to whether any of them is normally suffering. I'm convinced there's always one that's suffering. This is how I describe life in general. You have 100%. So your ability, work-life integration, balance, whatever we call it, is your ability to utilize this 100% to take care of all the different facets and roles that you have. So if you're a mother, then you're going to need to identify of the 100%, how do I allocate that? If it's career, what is that? If you're in a relationship, how much takes care of that, and so on. And also you, because I keep saying all of these are roles and hats that we wear. But Claire, you don't want to forget the Claire, the young girl who was a dreamer, who had crazy dreams. That girl still there, because that's not a role, that's you, right? So you want to allocate this 100% to take care of all the different facets of who you are, so that you feel like a balanced human being. Now, what I keep saying, and over time, I'm going to appreciate that what we have are seasons. You're going to have to identify how to allocate, and you'll find it changes. There are times, and there are people who've had to do travel extensively and so on, and you realize, okay, during this period, then I'm not spending as much time with family. But I find that there are great interventions. You can get on a gadget with your children and talk to them on the other side. I think it's about the intentionality, deciding which areas or which balls matter most to you, and I want to emphasize it's matter most to you, because there's a lot of views on what should matter to us, but what matters to you, and then you allocate time and keep switching. Now, there are times I've not been able to show up at a school event when I'd have wanted to, but there are times I also have not been able to show up in a meeting as well as I've been able to. But it's being able to understand, okay, how could that have gone differently, and make the adjustments. Because if I'm feeling bad about it, it perhaps suggests an imbalance somewhere that I need to go back and address. And when you realize it's 100%, and again, the funny thing is I've realized when you're younger, you probably have a lot of time. And then as you grow older, I'm not sure where time goes. You sort of feel like there's a lot of places to be. And you have to decide in this season, what am I doing? So in this season, what am I going to prioritize? As I said, as we grow older, there'll also be a shift and so on. The issue is to be able to identify the season that you're in, and also your priorities in that season, and be very intentional about allocating your 100% into all of these critical roles that you have.
Okay, intentionality is key. I'd like us to switch gears a little bit and learn a little bit more about you. What's your current read?
I am reading The Courage to be Disliked. It's a very interesting philosophical dialogue, and it's a very useful read, I think, for people who are struggling with trying to fit in, or trying to decide whether you are okay with not being liked, and then unreasonable expectations we place on ourselves. That's what I'm reading currently.
Okay, who's on your playlist?
I am listening to CeCe Winans, this Holy Forever. So again, I keep going back to the fact that I'm on assignment. So I go back to a point of adoration. I think it's more a point of gratitude for me, that every time you look at life, you realize that there's a lot of things that have gone in a way that you probably would not have expected that they go or they do, and you realize you have part of it that you can take credit for, but also part of it you can't. So I listen to that song on repeat a lot, so I get a point to give thanks and be in that posture of gratitude for everything I have and everything I am.
Nice. And what do you do for fun?
Gosh, one of the best advices one person gave me when I became CEO was sleep. It was the oddest advices, but it's interesting. She told me, please find time at least once a week or once a month where you sleep until your body wakes you up. And I did not realize that was actually a thing until I realized I am dreaming about my work, right? I'm dreaming about what report I need to do, and I actually forgot to do that, and so on. So at least once a month I'm trying, and twice a month I will try and ask, please let nobody wake me up until I wake up. And it's been interesting because you find that your brain is a lot clearer when you have had good rest. The other thing I do, as I've said, family is a big conversation for me. I'm in a season where I have teens who are going adult, so I really like to maximize on the time that we do spend together, so that I can be able to be sure that we're having the right conversations, and I can put in whatever I need to. I also do spend a lot of time in silence and in reflection, and I find, again, as I've said, all of these things are roles. But in that moment, in fact, I like to check, how am I feeling? Am I okay? Am I okay? So of course, there's many things that are burning, but in this moment, how do I feel? And if I can say, I can feel that it's silent, and find everything is not perfect, but it's silent, I like that space. So I can be able to say, how do I like where I am, how do I like how things are going, what is bothering me, and why is it bothering me, and I get to put in the intervention. So I find, and I say this cautiously, as I've grown older, I'm very particular about that moment to just sit by myself and reflect on how do I feel about where I am right now, and how everything else is going on around me.
Wow, self-checking is very, very important.
The mindfulness.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. And what would you say, how would you describe success? What does it mean to you?
I say success is personal. Everyone has to have their definition of success. Yeah. And I'm often not a proponent of picking a wild view of what success looks like. For me, success is around, I'm very curious, I'm intellectually curious about literally everything. I think I like to feel that I'm making progress in all the roles that I am in. I love being a mom. I enjoy being a wife. Those are important for me. I enjoy feeling like I'm having the right impact, even in my work and even with my children in all the different areas that I am in. So if I can feel that I'm having the right impact, or I like the impact that I'm having, and that I am, again, using my voice and my presence to drive things forward, I definitely will do that. So that's what I'll define success. Again, I think it's seasonal. You have to define in this season, what does success look like for me? And again, being realistic, it really has to be a definition that you define for yourself. It cannot be a definition that you set up from what everybody else has. And if you think about it, the worst thing about success that is material, and I like to make fun, okay, if you are driving a car, when you're inside the car, you don't know what that car is. Okay, I think half the time they have to put the logo on the steering wheel so that you remember, yeah? And of course, there's the small aspects of course, some are more comfortable and so on. But when you're inside, you just have a steering wheel and a seat. It's only the people outside who can see you. That's interesting about life. And the minute you get this one, you want another one. It's almost an insatiable appetite for next and next and next. And it always leaves you a feeling like, it's not enough. So I think it's important to define success your way and define it afresh in every season.
Wow, define success your way. Now, as we wrap up this interview, I'd like you to look into the camera and speak to our viewers and that woman who is hoping to rise in her career, figure out her money, life, and all these things. Give them one tip of advice.
To all the women out there, I think for me, my one advice to you is you already are enough in everything that you have. I think in every season you have to be able to define for yourself, what do I want? And that's a very important question to ask yourself. What do I want? And what will success mean for me in this season? And what are my priorities? And be very intentional about the things that set your soul on fire. Now, the things that set your soul on fire are not mine. They're yours and they matter. Please pay attention to those things. Live your life in your own rhythm, in your own way. Be curious about all the possibilities, because I think you're unstoppable, but you have to start with doing the self-work. Ask yourself, who am I? How do I feel about life? How do I feel about what I want? Because if you don't do your work, then, while the possibilities are limitless, you very well could be the one standing in front of yourself. So I say, dream big, dare big. The world is your oyster, literally. And I think you should really go for everything that you deserve. And trust me, any woman you see ahead of you, any woman you see who looks like they have made it, has been through that journey. So I challenge you to enjoy yours, and I challenge you to dream, like you have an open check, and trust me, success on your own terms. See you at the top.
Awesome, awesome. You've heard it from Njeri Jomo, the CEO of Jubilee Insurance. Be intentional and be fearless about what sets your soul on fire. This has been She Means Business. I have been your host, Claire Munde. Until next time, have a good one.